Hello everyone, it's History Behind the Warrior, and welcome back to another Mortal Kombat video. Now today, seeing as it has been a few days since the reveal of the official Mortal Kombat 1 bios, I thought that we could actually go through each of them today to talk a little bit more about their changes and whether or not they are beneficial, aka what everyone loves to deal with, retcons. Something that has become rather prominent in the series for a very long time now. However, retcons aren't necessarily a bad thing. In many instances and cases, there's actually a lot of positives by having the ability to erase particular endings or even storylines of characters that could have otherwise been poorly written or received so badly that it permanently scars the image of that character. The same essentially can be said for retcons themselves, as it can cause a lot of damage and discontinuation between storylines, narratives, and even the character themselves. But even so, with this new timeline, are these truly retcons, or simply new characters in themselves? Well, that's for us to break down today. Now, with Liu aside, as he is the only remnant of the past, let's begin to get through the characters, starting with Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Personally, I'm actually a really big fan of the changes these two have undergone. It's different, but is it too different though? Yeah, I actually agree. But honestly, I kind of see that to their benefit right now. Because in all honesty, if you actually really think about it, it's super healthy to have this change. Because as much as I love Hanzo Hasashi, how many more times can we see his family die this way? Like we saw it in the 2021 movie, Scorpion's Revenge, Mortal Kombat Legacy, the games, and the comics. If I'm honest, it really feels like it's lost its impact here, because we've been so conditioned to it. And honestly, that's not a great thing, because it means that idea and trope has been super overdone, which is kind of tragic, but also shows that this change definitely had to be made. I also think from a personal family dynamic standpoint, this is really good. It actually helps add a lot of steps and layers to the relationship of the Sub-Zero line, something that's never previously ever been properly explored. We've always heard of like the different ways their family has entered the clan, but never how it all came to be. So this is genuinely really good stuff. And when it comes to the narrative between Bi-Han and Kuei Liang, if you actually really think about it, it's a relationship that's never really been properly explored. We never get to see that brotherly bond form, or even really be disconnected. It's always been one of the biggest complaints of the series. Thus, I think that this is a great way to explore it, and eventually watch it deteriorate, as it's Scorpion and Sub-Zero. You know they're gonna fight each other at some point. As for the disappearance of Hanzo Hasashi and the Shirai Ryu, I definitely do think that's a bit of a weird one. I like the idea of re-establishing the clan in a completely new way, but I can't lie, I'm rather hesitant with this approach. Thus, I can only really judge it in its execution. But with how things are looking right now, I'm definitely keeping my eyes open. And with possibly Hanzo no longer under the Scorpion mantle, it now gives us a lot of freedom and opportunity to do something kind of new with the character. But we must wait and see. Moving on, we now, in my opinion, have arguably the most promising storyline in this new timeline and era. And that is the narrative between Mileena and Kitana. Much like Scorpion and Sub-Zero, who have their own personal stakes in this feud, here we get to add a little bit of legacy, royalty, as well as an inevitable betrayal. The changes are all here for something really special, as we haven't really had a chance to actually explore Edenia, its royal line, and its politics. It kind of adds a Game of Thrones-like elements to this series. But of course, should this have been done? And if so, in what ways could it be seen as good? Well, to start it off, we of course have to talk about Mileena being the older twin sister. And you know what? I actually kind of like it. It's a bit weird and definitely very different, but I like the element it adds to this story. Mileena's always been the identical twin sister of Kitana, but the relationship itself has always kind of lacked a form of depth, as it was kind of limited by its time and was never explored in this way. Here and now, we get to see that relationship form and why exactly Mileena is jealous of Kitana. I like the added layer that despite the rumors of betrayal circulating around Kitana, the Edenian princess continues to remain loyal to her sister, which is absolutely going to make it that much more tragic when this relationship eventually implodes. And I really do think this is quite beneficial for both characters here. Mileena isn't just a duplicated, envious sister anymore, but instead more of a tragic monster afflicted by a disease that could crumble her very empire, whilst the only person close to her is someone that she herself cannot trust, as she slowly goes insane, with her sister maybe being forced to take a throne she never wanted. I think that does so much for the two, as again, that relationship has never been fully tapped into. Now of course, there's no way we could talk about this without mentioning Tarkat, the new inflicted disease that presumably is the new way Tarkatans exist. Am I happy about this change? Am I not? Well, honestly, I'm kind of indifferent to it. However, I can see why it's a problem for some, because for those of you that don't know, the Tarkatans have had two different origins in each different timeline now. First starting off as demon-human hybrids, before then just becoming another realm that Shao Kahn merged with Outworld. So do I think the Tarkat change is a really big problem? Not really. However, it does add to a highlighted issue that there seems to be a lack of consistency with how the Tarkatans are utilized. So I really hope that going forward, that maybe the Tarkatans are a little bit more streamlined. However, I think there's actually an element of this that could really work to the narrative's favor. And I think it also kind of plays into the Game of Thrones element that this story provides. You see, with Kitana and Mileena being twins, it's very clear that the disease itself isn't genetic. It's an outside infliction. And with us currently knowing that there's a traitor amongst the Edenian High Court, it then makes us ask, who is actually there trying to sabotage the Edenian royal line? And of course, where does this disease come from? Well, that's how Tarkata could possibly come into the picture, because it has to come from somewhere, right? But as you can see, there's a lot of added and really interesting elements to the storyline that does surround these two. So I genuinely cannot wait to see this narrative unfold. Next here, we have Johnny Cage. And honestly, not much has changed with the actor. He's just more or less been modernized for the age of social media. And I think that's perfectly fine. I believe the formula of Johnny Cage was really perfected from 9 onwards. So I'm glad not much has been tampered with here. Now Lao here has undergone a pretty drastic change for sure. No longer coming from a wealthy ancestral line, it looks like Lao now seeks to create his own legend, his own legacy that he himself can control. And I do really like this direction for him, as one of my biggest gripes with Lao is that from 9 onwards, his cocky attitude largely overshadowed his own skill. So in many instances, I did find him to be quite insufferable, but with the changes applied here, it now gives him the opportunity to essentially create the great Kung Lao legacy, with himself being the prodigy for his family's success. I think this change is pretty beneficial, and it also kind of removes one of Lao's biggest crutches reasons, and that was that he was in constant competition with Liu Kang. But now with that gone, it gives him a fresh slate to build a new character that isn't entirely dependent on simply being seen as a rival. So I genuinely do hope that this change is for the better. Now, moving on, we do have Raiden here, and if I'm honest, he may as well be a completely new character. And you know what? I kind of dig that. I think that it helps add a lot of weight to Raiden's sacrifice at the end of 11, and just how different this Raiden will be compared to the old one, and reinforces just how new everything is here. Really, if you think about it, he's kind of an anomaly here, so I don't really think we can compare him to his past self, as they seem to be two entirely different personalities. Now, our final character here is Kenshi, and man, I fucking adore what's happened to him here, as one of the biggest mysteries that has always surrounded Kenshi was what became of his royal line. How did they lose their wealth? And how did they lose Sento? I'm so glad that this is being expanded on here, especially with his ties to the Yakuza, showing a little bit of a redemption arc, and how he's fighting to redeem his own family line. That's a really good added layer to the character. And Kenshi himself was one of the glimmering stars to really resonate from an era of games that had some pretty hit or miss characters. I think a personal highlight for me is actually us getting to see how did he lose his eyesight, as it's always been explored prior to the events of the game itself. Now we get to see this happen in real time, and how does he recover from it? But with that said, everyone, that's kind of been my coverage of the characters across the board right now, and if I'm honest, I'm genuinely very happy how they've been handled. There's some things I definitely need to see kind of flourish a little more, but I'm keeping my mind and opinion open about it. I know some have very mixed opinions, because retcon bad, but as you can tell from some of the ideas I've brought here, there are many instances where changes like this can be both healthy and extremely beneficial. With that said, everyone, down in the comments below, what changes do you like the most, and what characters are you the most excited to explore? But for now, everyone, that's been it for me. So as always, stay strong, stay well, and keep on fighting. Take care, everyone. I'll catch you all soon.